with the current reopening plan, do you feel safe going back?
I feel safe because I'll have my second vaccination on Friday. So I'll be fine. Now, my team and I have to thank my administrative team. Woohoo, Blair admin. We have been on the front line since last year. We've been giving out materials. We've been collecting materials. We've been meeting with families in parking lots. We've been going above and beyond to ensure that our kids have all the materials they need for success. So I would say, ensuring that they are vaccinated because they are on the front lines. Also, our cafeteria workers, our food services workers, I want them vaccinated if they choose to get a vaccine. They have been delivering lunches to the public since last March. I mean, they are right up on the cars giving lunches. And so we're fortunate that they've remained safe through this whole process.
The board sent a letter to the governor requesting that teachers be prioritized. But you know that the school system does not control the vaccines or the vaccine rollout. So all we can do is ask that they prioritize numbers. And since they seem to have indicated that they're willing to try to do this, and teachers are in the level that the county is on now. So we're working towards that. But under the state's prioritization, you know, they are prioritized right now. And so we've been working with Johns Hopkins to get our staff vaccinated. But we're not just doing the teachers, we're also interested in getting anybody that has a front-facing position vaccinated. So that would be, you know, any building workers, cafeteria workers, and they actually have been working the entire time.
What has the vaccination process been like for you?
I got my first vaccination, well, I get the second one Friday, so almost a month ago. It was not a problem. I received an email from MCPS saying that I would have to register to have it done. Link to register, I could choose the location, and I could choose the time. And so when I went to have the vaccination done, I actually saw staff from Blake and staff from Wheaton. I wore my Blair mask because I want to show the community that I received the vaccination and I'm alive. I know some communities, some of our minority communities, are afraid of the vaccination, and I wanted to make sure they see that I'm an African-American woman, I had the vaccination done, and I'm fine.
The needle in a haystack. So we get these emails and it's like, oh, you can get a vaccination here at Tacoma Park. You can, you know, get it at Venice Hospital, Holy Cross, Six Flags, whatever. So I signed up to get it. This was when you deemed 1A phase and 1B, and teachers were in 1B. So I signed up. I'm a teacher, I'm 1B. And the night before, they said, we're sorry, we cannot accommodate you. You are not 75 or older. And I was like, but yet we're in 1B and I'm a teacher and I have an autoimmune condition. Like, luckily my colleagues have been looking out for each other. Hey, Six Flags is just opening. They, you know, here's the link, go to this. Hey, go to this. And a couple of times, once again, full. And I hit the jackpot last week. And so I have one coming up, at the first one coming up. So I lucked out to find that appointment and the subsequent appointment 2 weeks later. Mm-hmm. So, but it was kind of, in short, it was a little difficult.
So I was able to secure a vaccine on my own. I got very lucky at the very beginning of the process when Holy Cross opened up appointments to 1B. I just happened to be one of the first people who was tipped off to that. So I just happened to have everything on autofill and I was able to zip through, but I'm, fairly young and experienced with the internet and the way to click through things quickly. And I think a lot of, obviously older people were having a really hard time navigating that. And so it was very tough. And since then, people have had a really hard time. Those Holy Cross appointments go really, really quickly. So I have still not received my Johns Hopkins chart email from the county. So if I hadn't gotten vaccinated on my own, I definitely would not be vaccinated by the time school, I was, expected to be back in the building, fully vaccinated anyway.
Why do you think teachers right now aren't being vaccinated?
I'm not sure. It's just from what I read in the news, it appears that there just aren't enough vaccines to give to all the different groups. I'm hopeful that teachers will be vaccinated soon. It's a confidential matter, so I can't even ask. I can't do a poll who's been vaccinated. I guess I could an anonymous poll, but it's a confidential matter because for many, many reasons, staff may choose not to be vaccinated. But I do, again, believe that those who want to be vaccinated should be vaccinated.
I mean, I think the big thing is that there just aren't enough vaccines to meet the demand and to cover the amount of people in the 3 groups that are currently open. So I think we're just, or the state is just behind and struggling with getting vaccines to the clinics where they need to be. There's also been so much confusion between county versus state sites, which group people are, each site is in. There's so much confusion around that. So I think that's also just the messaging and the websites and the fact that people can send these links even though they're not supposed to be sent these links. It's just been a really, kind of disorganized rollout.
So teachers, for a myriad of reasons, health concerns, had the opportunity to apply for ADA accommodations. And those accommodations could say, if approved, that the teacher could telework for the rest of the year. The teacher could telework for, part of the year, or they can meet with their principal and get a special consideration. Every situation is unique without going into detail, but some people really do have unique circumstances for which they cannot get sick.
So the ADA process was basically just an email you sent and then a Google form with documentation. But the ADA is really limited just to staff members with health concerns. And there is no real process, at least not an official process, when you have household members who have health concerns. So I think that's been one of the most frustrating parts of this, is that those of us who have people at home who are compromised, whose immune systems are compromised, we're really not being given any ADA. There's no ADA accommodations have been proven for, even children with, teachers who have children with leukemia, they were denied ADA accommodation. So, the ADA is really just limited. The only protection that really occurs is for the individual employee. So I think with something that's so contagious like this, that we'll be bringing that home to our family members, I think that's been really frustrating because it didn't seem like that net got wider, if that makes sense. Because legally they're not bound to. So I think that's really, ADA wasn't really like, oh, in a pandemic, you know what I mean? The concept of a pandemic is pretty foreign for all of us. So yeah. Okay.
Do you have any experience with like ADA requests being denied, or have you heard about anything?
Mine was denied for my husband, and so it just nobody I know was approved for a family member, a household member, and but even people who have health conditions themselves, like asthma, type 2 diabetes, people like that were also being denied for themselves. So I think that the denial was definitely sort of the default position from MCPS, simply because they can't accommodate the people, right? So we have students in buildings, and legally we need bodies supervising those students.
The ADA just seems to have been random, and I was approved. I filled out an ADA request for my health concerns, and I was actually approved to continue teleworking. However, my husband also teaches at Blair, and he sent in the same paperwork saying, my wife has a history of an autoimmune condition and is high risk for complications from a COVID-19 infection. I don't want to bring something home to her. I also have a son who's high risk, who has an autoimmune condition. So they denied him. So I was like, like, how are you figuring this out? Don't the names kind of correlate? Don't you pay attention to that? So the union has put together kind of like a plan for teachers to reapply those who were denied and appeal the decisions. There are teachers who are very afraid and have high anxiety about returning. Who wants to lose their life, for a craft that we found that we are, that we've like honed and worked on and went to school and paid a lot of money for? Do we want to die for this?
I have an immunocompromised person in my house who hasn't been vaccinated. I think I don't know. I think it's hard to feel safe right now with the numbers being what they are. I mean, I know our numbers are dropping, but I'm also concerned about new variants. And, ultimately it's not just death that worries me. I mean, that's obviously a concern, but I also think that we don't really know what the long-term damage might be to people's bodies. And I don't want my kids getting it. So, I would feel really awful if I went back to work broad at home and one of my kids ended up with some kind of long-term lung damage, or, obviously if I gave it to my husband. So
if you were a teacher working in person or planning to work in person in schools next week, how would you feel about that?
I think I would feel okay with it, because we have done what we would call the 5 pillars of public health. We're requiring the mask be worn, washing hands, social distancing, personal health. There's going to be a requirement that you certify that you don't have a fever for the day. And we have, of course, been working on meeting the CDC requirements for building air filtration. So I think I would be fine with it. And you may not realize, even though we don't operate the equity centers have been operating in 50 of our schools, and they have been doing it pretty successfully. So it can be done. And the children are wearing the mask. I have been by and seen them myself.
I think if we're going to return, there needs to be robust testing. I think that one of the things that has been frustrating as a teacher to watch is sort of this idea that students aren't getting, they don't get it, right? That young people don't get it. But the truth is young people do get it. They're just asymptomatic spreaders, which means if you don't have symptoms, you're not going to be tested. So I think the data is really inconclusive and kind of, we're missing data because we don't have testing, and we didn't have testing in this country. Our testing was terrible in the beginning of all of this. So, I think that the idea of asymptomatic spread can only really be curbed with really robust testing. So I think it should be mandatory, and I think it should be a part of a return, any return, as well as contact tracing. That also needs to be part of the return plan.
Well, I think that's pretty invasive. And when I read about that, I think yesterday the district sent out that they're trying to make that happen. They also sent a video of how it would be done. And I'm thinking it will keep us safe, but I'm wondering, given the size of my school, I can only speak for my school. And if you have 1,100 students that will eventually return by the end of April, that's a lot of swabs. And how soon will we get that information back? That almost will take an entire 2 periods for kids to do it. I can't, unless they do it in their English classes or something. So we really have to look into how we can feasibly do that and make sure that we get the results in a timely manner. Small schools, I think, not a problem. I know a number of private schools do it, but they're a lot smaller than Montgomery Blair.
Do you feel like you have a clear understanding of what your work environment would look like in person?
No, not yet. I think Ms. Johnson has been clearer and more direct with us than the county has been. And so I really appreciate Principal Johnson's just, I think she's really looking out for staff, and I feel, and students, and safety. And I think safety is her primary goal. So I'm confident that she's going to do everything that she can to make it as safe as possible for us. But I'm still very unclear. And I think the plans seemed to change sort of at the last minute during that last board meeting about what our expectations were and what we were told by Blair and MCPS, and then sort of how that somehow changed kind of in the meeting without really the unions being notified, and even the schools themselves knowing what was going to take place at that meeting. So I think we all felt a little blindsided by that. So I'm still not, like I said, I'm not exactly sure what any of this is going to look like once we get into the buildings themselves.
Like, this is historic. We have never been out of school a year because of a virus. I mean, I almost have to pinch myself to think that we've been out of school a year, almost a year. March 13th, it'll be a year. And I think given what we don't know and given the parameters for which we have to work in, I think MCPS is doing the best they can. Sometimes I watch the board meeting and things are shared that I hadn't seen before. I do assign my entire administrative team to watch the board meeting because we learn new information. And then we get that information and we have to go back and revise our plan. We're meeting with the community on Tuesday, March 2nd, and we pushed our date back on purpose because we're not a school that will receive students on March 1st. Our first group will enter the building March 15th. So we're meeting with the community to share our plan, our updated revised plan.